Do you think that people pleasing and perfectionism are tied together?
Totally.
Yeah, I agree.
I totally think so.
I agree.
I don't think I know one people pleaser that's not a wouldn't call themselves a perfectionist as well. You know?
Right? Yeah.
Hello,
Welcome
or welcome back,
to the Womanly Podcast,
where we embrace womanhood in its entirety.
From the hard and awkward conversations
to the silly and embarrassing moments.
An effort to reclaim and redefine what it means to be womanly in this crazy, wacky world. I'm Delana, the neutral one.
I'm Katie, the morbid one.
And I'm Madeline, the other one. And we're so excited that you've joined us today because there's room for you at our table.
So, grab your favorite drink and let's have a conversation.
Let's have you introduce yourself, Hilary. We've got a guest this week, which we're so excited about. Always excited about the guests.
Yes, and
we get so tired of talking just to these other two people.
We have a very particular way that we like to introduce guests on this podcast, and that is, who do you think you are?
Yeah. Who do you think you are?
I feel very threatened right now.
That's the point. That's the point. Welcome to Womanly. We're glad you're here.
Always room for you at our table.
I mean, my name's Hilary.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Oh, this is the worst question to ever ask anybody ever. But I am a loving cat mom of one.
Oh my gosh, that's the best answer.
Yeah.
That is.
That's all we need to know.
That's all I want. That's my identity. Wife comes second after being cat mom of one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have you been married now?
2 years.
2 years. Wow. You're starting to get past the newlywed stage. Well, welcome, Hilary. We're glad you're here.
We are.
I'm happy to be here.
What's everyone drinking?
I'm drinking a grapefruit Topo Chico. I had a really hard time pronouncing that. Grapefruit Chico.
I have a cranberry limeade.
Well, I'm drinking a classic root beer Olipop.
Yum.
It's like having the root beer without the guilt.
I'm just having a classic Diet Dr. Pepper.
Well, every week we like to ask each other how we're doing in a very unique way. So for this week's check-in question, I have, what, if anything, has made you smile this week?
Oh, I like that one. I got my nails done yesterday, and every time I look at them, they make me smile because they're so
literally
cute.
so cute.
Yeah, I love them. So my sister did them for me for my birthday, which is so nice. And yeah, they make me smile every time I look at them.
Aww.
And then, of course, baby kitten makes me smile too. Every time I see baby kitten, makes me smile.
Have we told them that Madeline is adopting?
I'm
my
adopting the
kitten?
baby.
Yes.
Yes.
If you watch previous episodes, my cat had a kitten, and Madeline is going to be the new mommy.
I'm the new mama.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited. I could gush on it forever, but
yeah,
it's very, very exciting. So
it's literally like I see you with the kitten, and I'm like, this is so meant to be. Like, this is just
I feel like it is too.
Yeah.
I was telling Hilary every time I come in here, I'm like,
yes.
And so whenever I do it, she's like, I know who you are. So yeah, it's been so fun. So I'm really excited. That makes me smile too. There's been a lot of other stuff too, but those are two nice, fun ones.
I booked a cruise for January.
Woo!
That's an exciting thing.
That's super exciting.
You asked that like a question.
Yeah. Did you actually do it?
I mean,
I'm not sure.
I put my down payment down.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Yes.
Made you smile?
Yes, it
There you
made me
go.
smile, and I got to meet the kitten before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she just met the kitten for the first time.
So cute.
Yeah.
So
Oh my
cute,
gosh.
so cute.
Yeah. Wait, where are you going?
Mexico.
Oh my
Nice.
5-day cruise.
5 days? Okay, perfect.
Yes. Katie, what made you smile this week? Besides me.
Yeah. Fireworks made me smile.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Cute. I love it.
I love that.
Delana?
I went on the boat with my mom. I got to spend a night at my mom's lake house, which was fun. And it's such beautiful property. And it was really nice. We went out on the boat, and it was just like exactly the kind of 4th of July that I needed, because it wasn't like alcohol and people being all crazy. It was just super chill, laying in the water, talking when you feel like it.
Yeah. This week we are tackling quite the subject. I think all of us are internally cringing right now, thinking about even having this discussion. So we are talking about the art of people pleasing.
Oh my God.
Which isn't quite, not really the type of art you really want to master, but a lot of us have. So much so that it ends up being a detriment to yourself. So let's just dive on in. Let's get started with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
No holds barred. Let's just go.
All right.
I think people pleasing, I think it kind of goes without saying in a way. It's a very aptly named thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you are operating with the intention, whether subconscious or intentional,
Mm-hmm.
of people pleasing, it's usually something that you're doing 100% to please others and not usually to please yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there can be times whenever you're doing something, it's a win-win-win. You're going to get something out of it. Other people are going to get something out of it. I do think that there are times whenever you do something selfless because you know that somebody else is going to enjoy it. I think the main difference with people pleasing itself is that you're almost always costing yourself something in the process of trying to make somebody else happy. And it could be, again, like I said, it can be something that you're totally aware of that you're doing.
Mhm.
More often than not, you're probably not aware that you're doing that at all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that would be my definition of it.
Yeah, I think to me, people pleasing is, it's sacrificing yourself to please another person. And people pleasing is learning how to say no. You're just
Being
constantly
bulldozed.
saying yes. Yeah, and being bulldozed
Yeah.
24/7 or
Yeah.
whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah.
I think it could even go into like when you feel guilty about saying no to something to where it like tears you up.
Mhm.
So people pleasing to me is like having this like internal drive to constantly do what is best for others and not necessarily for yourself. Like,
Right.
it's very draining, very like costly to your mind, to your body. You basically either don't know you're doing it or you do know you're doing it, and later you find out, oh, I definitely didn't want to do this
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah.
I did it, and now I'm regretting it and not continuing the cycle and never breaking it.
Yeah.
Right.
What about you, Delina?
So I think the first thing I think of whenever I think of a people pleaser, is just somebody who's nice. You know what I'm saying? Like we feel that like doing the nice thing is the right thing because we don't want the conflict, right? The conflict is hard to navigate. It doesn't feel good for you. It doesn't feel good for the other person. To your point, it's wanting to say yes to everything to avoid that conflict. I think like the stereotypical people pleaser is just the person who's too nice.
Yeah.
Right.
And the funny thing about that is that I think it is rooted in like obviously self-contempt and lack of self-worth or recognition of self-worth.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that I've realized for me is that like a lot of my people pleasing was me like trying to control the outcome of situations. Like it was a major control issue and fear of failure.
Yep.
So I was trying to control the situation
Yeah.
by controlling people's perception of me by being too nice,
Yes.
or being the workaholic or being, whatever I need to be in order to get the perception that I want from other people of myself,
Mhm.
and I actually have found that it was more about me than it was about actually other people, even though it feels like you're living for other people.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that 100,000%. So, I want to know how y'all think that people pleasing manifests as a more of like a practice in y'all's life? Like, what does that look like?
Easy. I'm a peacemaker. Like, if y'all are into Enneagram, I'm a 9, wing 1.
Dang, you know that.
Getting down to that nitty gritty.
Dang.
I genuinely just will do anything to keep the peace. I do not like conflict. Even if it causes serious conflict in me if I'm avoiding saying something or doing something that I think would create chaos, basically, or my perceived chaos. Who knows if it would, if I actually said anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my therapy session today, so this is perfect.
Yeah, it's good timing. I'm a middle child, so I think that's all I have to say about that. I'm also the oldest daughter, so I think that's all I have to say about that.
Did you know that I am also both of those things?
I did know that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we're so much alike.
We always say we're the same
like the exact same person. We're even starting to say the exact same things at the exact same time. It's kind of getting scary.
Do it.
We did that twice last time we recorded.
Oh yeah, we did.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
No, I think for me, and I'm answering my own question a little quickly, but I think for me, people pleasing really manifests itself mainly with my family and mainly with my mom. I really dread and fear upsetting my mom and hurting my mom or causing her any sort of challenges or discomfort. So that for me has, and it's been a recent thing that I've recognized that and realized that about myself and my motivations with my behavior around my family. But for different reasons, I feel as though I was almost nurtured into that position, but also it was one I willingly accepted. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I really started recognizing that that's exactly what was happening. It was just kind of an autopilot thing for me for a long time. But so mainly it's a bigger issue with my family. I can kind of get into it with friends, kind of get into it with work. Beyond that, I don't really have an issue that I've recognized yet with people pleasing. I do like to consider myself a nice person, a kind person, but through college, I really gained quite the backbone and was able to identify my boundaries with all of that. So but that for me is really where it ends up being an issue, is around family members, and then just people I really care about, because I'm much more likely to put their feelings and happiness above my own. And that sounds very like self-indulgent saying that in a way, I recognize, but my saying that, I know that in doing that, I'm almost always hurting myself, and that there is a lot of balance that could be had there. So that's my experience.
Yeah. For me, people pleasing doesn't really manifest itself in any particular way or any particular group of people. I think it's just a general overall fear of not doing something to please everyone and causing like anger or confliction or whatever that may mean to you. But yeah, to me, that's kind of where I struggle most, is just like getting like crippling anxiety and like fear of separating people or whatever.
Being the cause
like
of discord.
That's a good word. Yeah.
Mine is like has gotten a lot better over the years. I used to have mad social anxiety, and that of course is so deeply rooted in people pleasing, you know, and wanting to say the exact right thing and not knowing what to say or how to make conversation, you know, because you don't want to say the wrong thing and people don't like you, you know. And now I don't have as much social anxiety. I definitely still experience it sometimes, and I'm like, it'll just be out of nowhere. I'll just all of a sudden I'll feel like I'm like, I have no idea how to talk like a human being.
Now you're on a podcast.
I know, right? And so it'll come every once in a while, but
Yeah.
The way that I look at it is that like I've been able, through therapy, thank goodness, have been able to like shave off a lot of this bad coping mechanisms, including a lot of forms of people pleasing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And right now I feel like I've recognized in myself recently my like, I don't want to say like final boss because it'll never be over,
Right.
you know, but like the big boy,
the level, like, I don't know.
The level 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where I'm like, okay, so now I was like, yeah, shaving all that stuff off was easy work compared to this, because now I've recognized that my people pleasing has kind of morphed into, oh, I used to have social anxiety, but I came out of it and I won. You know what I'm saying? And I used to be poor, and now I'm better off than any of my family members.
Right.
And like I have now gone into like I win. I'm the person that wins, and so I feel like I have to keep, like, I put so much pressure on myself to like always be like impressing people, and it's not, and that is so self-centered, you know what I'm saying? Incredibly and egotistical, you know what I'm saying? And so that's where I feel like, God, I really just need to, now I feel like I'm going into this phase in my life where I'm like, what if you just didn't do that? You know, like, how about not? And it's really hard because it doesn't come out in like big, like prideful ways, like you hear me talk and I'm like,
exactly.
But it does come out whenever like I work on something and I felt really, really good about it, but it didn't come out, and I like spiral, you know, where I'm like, but I calculated it, and I, you know what I'm saying? Like,
do you think
didn't
that,
have control over it?
Well, I think obviously we've talked about how people pleasing, there's control issues associated with it. There's pride associated with it. Do you think that people pleasing and perfectionism are tied together?
Totally.
Yeah, I agree.
I totally think
I agree.
I don't think I know one people pleaser that's not a wouldn't call themselves a perfectionist as well, you know?
Right? Yeah, I agree. So I was like, wanted to pose the question to the class because when you were talking about all of that, I was thinking about an event I had a couple of months ago where somebody came up at the end of it and she was like, what a great, like one of my coworkers, she was like, what a great event. Like this turned out so good. I'm so excited for you and proud. I hope you're really happy. And I was like, it's really good, but honestly, you know, they had some faults and it could be better. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you always do that after, you know, no matter what kind of an event you have and, you know, what kind of compliments you get, you always kind of have that reaction, and that it's not, thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy about it. It was great, but it could be better. And I hadn't had that pointed out to me before. And so as you were talking about that, made me think about that, because part of it for me was, it was wanting to feel fully satisfied in what I did. And I don't think I'll be fully satisfied with what I do until I know for sure that everybody around me is perfectly happy with it. So to me, it's very, very linked in that way, that my satisfaction from something, what I would, if I would call it perfect ever, put that in air quotes, perfect, it's entirely dependent on how other people experience it. Because I'm not gauging it based on my understanding of its weaknesses or lacks or whatever else, that those things do not affect anybody else. I'm only basing it on the weaknesses and lacks that do affect the other people at the event. So until those things are gone and I'm the only one that might be affected by any weakness and lack, it will never be perfect. So it's linked. It's linked permanently.
Totally. Yep. People pleasing sucks.
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
The life out of you.
Yeah, dude, it really does. It's like
Yeah.
one of those things where it makes you feel like your entire life is just in a corner, you know? Like you're in a corner and you're like, I have nowhere to turn. You know?
Yeah.
Like I can't do anything because everything I do, somebody's not going to like it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I've personally gotten past a lot of that aspect of it, of like everything that I do, somebody's not going to like it. To an extent, there are still some times where, like, for example, at work, I'll build an entire system and I'll be like super proud of it, and I'll bring it to the team and I'll be like, hey, check out this really cool system I built for you. And then they'll be like, whenever people see systems, then they never first say like, oh, I love this. They first say, but what if it did this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it like immediately feels like, oh, I didn't do a good job.
Right.
You know? And so it'll still come out in little ways like that where I'm like, oh, I thought I nailed it, you know? But other than that, I feel like in terms of like knowing that somebody's not going to like me, I've gotten past that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I have more enemies than I've ever had in my entire
I have not gotten past that.
I'm opposite of you, where I'm like, I have no problem being the person causing conflict. Yeah. Where I'm very confrontational. Hilary knows. I'm very confrontational.
Oh my gosh, I'm the least confrontational person in the whole world.
But I don't like confrontation per se. I just like communication.
Yeah.
You know,
And a lot of people view communication as
conflict.
conflict.
Yeah,
that's a good
absolutely.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think in that, even in that communication, there's people pleasing.
Oh, yeah.
It's even if you say, you're like, hey, I'm really good at conflict, or like, I'm really
Yeah.
good at communicating these things. It's controlling how the other person reacts, even if you don't care what they think. You're like, you got it off of your chest.
Yeah.
You've said your piece, you've said what you need to say.
Yeah.
But there's always that little like smidge of, well, getting to that point. Like, I have all these things I need to say. I know I will physically feel better if I say A, B, C, D, E. But what if the conversation goes bad? What if they come back at me all crazy? And like, those are the things that play in my head over and over and over again.
Yeah.
To where it's like crippling, where I'm like, in my head, you know, those shower talks of like, oh, I can say that. I'm like, oh, that would be a really good point. Like, that has been me my entire life. Like, oh, I should have said this. Like, that would have really nailed them, and I would have felt better. Not that I'm putting them down, but
that you're raising yourself up.
I would have gotten my point across and said what needed to be said, whether it be in a loving way, or even if it doesn't come out in a loving way, like, oh well, like emotions are okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being a recovering, because I look at it like being a recovering people pleaser. I just went through a really tough thing in the past couple of weeks, and I consulted Delana and Katie on it extensively the last time we were together, but a development in this particular struggle happened last night, and I don't feel relief over it. I don't feel, and it was something that I was very similar. I was feeling very concerned over about how can I do this to avoid the biggest reaction that I can, assume is going to happen based on history,
Right.
And I spent a lot of time dreading it and dreading it and dreading it and knowing it was going to go bad. And I finally did something about it last night, and I don't feel relief, because even on the other side of it, even though I did what I knew was best for me in that moment, and I'm sticking to a decision that I've made and have communicated that the way that I needed to, I still feel badly over how it affects the other person that I communicated that decision to. And the relief that any other person might have gotten from communicating that, I don't have, because I'm still learning that my decisions often have to be made in my best interest, the way that I want to make them, whether or not they're mistakes or not. You know, it's
they're
your decision to make.
Yeah.
But knowing that that decision is going to affect other people around you and that they're going to have opinions on it, I'm not feeling that relief that I had hoped for. So I wanted to add that, because what you were saying was so true. But even still, it's like, even if you say the right things and get it off your chest the right way, whenever you are really somebody who struggles with people pleasing, sometimes it still doesn't feel good, even if you do it right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I feel like that, like, people pleasing becomes a lot more, like, it manifests in more complicated ways whenever you have, like, depending on the person, right? Like, I have members in my family where I still have not confronted them on things, because I think for the most part, you know, if I'm following my gut, it just doesn't feel right. And I don't know when it's going to feel right.
Right.
You know? And then the other part is that, but with them, sometimes I'll notice myself, like, slip back into this fragile people pleaser type of state where I'm like, and I don't even recognize myself. I'm like, what even happened? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's these people that you have long history with, and your lives have been so intricately intertwined in complicated ways. And there's so
probably codependencies, maybe
and stuff like that. And there's so, I think we have to give ourselves a lot more credit in those situations, that it's like, I think it's so much more complicated than just like, oh, I just really wanted to make this person happy. It's like, whoa, no, I had emotional dependencies on this person that I'm still trying to work through and stuff like that. And just like overall, you know, whenever you're trying to navigate a situation, like you were talking about in the shower, like, oh, I should have said this and I should have said that. And we don't give ourselves enough credit in that, like, that, well, not even for the things we did say, but just that it's so hard to navigate situations when you're in them, when you're outside of, and we just kick ourselves for it, because we're like, oh, I should have known to say this, I should have known to say that. And you're like, you're navigating at the same time that you're trying to figure out how to communicate. You're also trying to navigate and sort out all of your own emotions, and trying to see it from the other person's side, and trying to sort out who's right, who's wrong. Like, how do I be the most fair in this situation? And that's so hard.
And not even just that. On top of that, you're receiving and decoding the messages that they're sending to you within that conversation. There's so much happening.
It's all happening at the same time. And then afterwards, often we just go and we kick ourselves and we're like, oh, I'm just such a people pleaser because I just didn't say what I wanted to say. And it's like, dude, give yourself more credit. You know, like, it's, you just handled a really, really complicated situation to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think showed up for yourself.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, whenever you're learning to navigate those and find your satisfaction in them, sometimes, especially whenever your default mode has been to gain satisfaction from other people's reactions in positive ways, oftentimes there's not like a linear replacement of what that satisfaction looks like. So if you're used to getting your satisfaction from an action or a conversation or a decision that you've made based on other people's positive reinforcement, you cannot, and you most likely are not going to be able to immediately replace that with your own positive reinforcement on your own decisions and actions and conversations that you have. That it's almost as if you have to look at it more on textbook. Like, you have to look at it more, this is the decision I made. This is the decision I want to make. And you have to, like, put it on paper and be happy with the fact that what you said matches up with what's on paper versus what you said matching up with, like, your expectation of how it should feel, you know, the environment around you, other people's reaction to it. It's like, it needs to be a solid thing that you can actually put on paper and say, this matches.
Yes.
Instead of trying to make your communication of it match what the environment is sending you. Does that make sense?
Yes, and to that point, especially if you're in the early stages of being a recovering people pleaser, if you're like just starting to recover, then I feel like that's even more important.
It's so important.
In that, like, so many things that you're going to do, you're going to be like, was that right? Was that wrong? Like, I feel like I stood up for myself a little bit more, but I don't know, it didn't make me really feel that good, you know, and
they don't feel good.
And they don't feel good because they were confronted on something, you know, and so you just question and question and question. And I feel like it's so important that what you just said is like,
make sure that it's textbook. Like
you have to look at it almost from like a factual standpoint of just like, okay, no, objectively this is correct. Okay, so we're gonna keep moving forward.
That's exactly what I was trying to explain. I'm glad you understood it. But and the point I also want to make with that, and you touched it, is that in the early stages, people pleasing is something that you do because it makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. And whenever you go against that, which is most likely something that you've done your whole life, the only thing you know to do with other people, it's going to feel really, really bad. Yeah. And it's going to be really, I mean, it's almost as if saying like recovering people pleaser, it sounds funny, but it's legitimate. Like this is something that is almost an addictive behavior because you're getting that instant dopamine hit or whatever else that comes from seeing that gratification from others. And it's going to feel really, really bad. And that bad feeling is going to immediately make you want to stop standing up for yourself or changing your behavior. Yes. So making it so that you're focusing on that factual thing, that this is what's right and what's true for me. That if you stay in that mindset, it gets easier and easier and easier. Yeah. And the bad feelings that come from it may shift and grow and change, and you'll experience things differently.
And I feel like what is really important with that is that there's a lot of times whenever you're in a people pleasing, you know, a lot of times that is birthed out of being surrounded by people that put you in a place where your coping mechanism became people pleasing, right? And that's what made you safe. So whenever you are like starting your recovery, one thing that makes it so much easier, well, not easier, it's not easy, but one thing that can bring you a lot more clarity is one of the biggest things that I did was I cut the person that was clouding my judgment the most out of my life, which was my dad. Yeah. And the more years I've had that separation, the clearer my mind has got to the point that I am able to more objectively look at things and be like, oh, no, that's not how the situation was supposed to be handled. Right. So if you have somebody that's constantly clouding your judgment on what the right thing to do was, or, you know, if they're the person that always wants you to take the blame and all that stuff, and that's what's fed a lot of the people pleasing, then that's probably the person that needs some boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Do we want to...
Yeah, let's go through the list.
Through the list?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you're sitting here listening to this and you're like, I might be a people pleaser, but I'm not totally sure, we're going to go through a list and we're going to find out.
Ooh. Yes.
Get ready.
All right. Are we going to do like raise your hand over here, or are we going to commentate on
heat.
each one?
Should I go get a buzzer?
Right? No, I think we can say... Yes, that applies. Or, you know, like I agree or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Raising your hand doesn't really work for an audio format.
Touche.
Okay, what is this? What is this list on?
So this is from Psychology Today. It's a little clip on 10 signs you're a people pleaser. All right, everybody. Number 1, you pretend to agree with everyone.
Oh.
I used to do that. I don't do that anymore.
I do. I definitely pretend to agree.
Really?
It's very situational.
Yeah,
very situational for me.
Like how so? Like, do you have an example?
Like, usually I'll agree with people to get them out of my face. I'm like, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, if you just
usually strangers, I'm like, okay.
That too.
Yeah. Like, I'm pretty good at that, but it's with other like people, like the deeper the relationship I have, like I'll maybe start to agree, but then like I'll catch my thought. I'm like, wait, no.
Yeah. I've noticed that. Yeah.
I think for me, it's more if I truly have an opinion on it or not. If I don't really have an opinion, then I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
If I have,
I don't think it's necessarily agreeing. It's just kind of like
it's just like
acknowledging.
It's just a kind of acknowledging
Yeah.
or you know, just saying. But at the same time, I've tried even still advocating for yourself is even just saying, I don't have much of an opinion on that.
Mm.
You know, I feel
rather than just saying,
instead of saying, you know, because I think at that point you're kind of like trying to create, not really, I don't know.
You're trying to appease them.
You're
or
trying to appease them.
You're
or
trying
like
to get them to
trying
like
create like some sort of connection that doesn't exactly exist.
Yeah.
And even still, it's just an avenue for miscommunication. For some people to not fully understand where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So I've even just tried to get better about just saying like, you know, I don't really have strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if I have strong feelings about something and it's on the opposite spectrum, I've gotten much better in recent years about voicing that, even with people in my family.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll call something out, and it's not totally been taken too nicely at a lot of times. But at the same time, it's like they, you know, you learn. It's you said something earlier about how you kind of try to anticipate the way that somebody's going to react to something. And we've mentioned on a previous episode saying like 9 times out of 10, it's not going to go the way you expect it to.
Yes. Right.
Most of the time, it's not going to go as bad as you expect it to.
Right. That catastrophic thinking.
The more times that you voice your opinions that seem other than the people around you, the more you're comfortable with the fact that a lot of times people, especially those who love you, are going to ideally respect the fact that you can have differing opinions.
Right.
I like in a work setting, I will voice all the opinions.
Yeah.
I'll be like this past quarterly meeting that we had with the team, me and the CEO duked it out.
Yeah.
Because like I was like, no, we need this. And he was like, no, we need this. And we came to the middle. So it's
Nice.
good. That tension is good. That's why he put me in the position that I'm in, so that we butt heads. And so, cause he knows he'll go too far one way, and you know, I have a tendency to go too far the other way. So creates good balance in the business. Anyways, so in a work setting, I do really well. Like I'll speak my mind, but my boss has done a really great job of also cultivating that environment, you know, to where you feel safe to do those things. In my personal life, I would say most of the time I don't care to share my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just don't want to get, like, if we disagree, it's not a people pleasing thing. It's I don't have the energy to like, I'm just like, okay, I'll usually just have a really neutral response. I'll be like, all right.
Yeah. I feel like that's something, you know, whenever you say, I don't really have a strong opinion on that.
Like politics.
You get kind of 2 responses. You get somebody who's just like, I don't know what to say back to what you just said, because people don't know how to deal with having a third option. Right. We have like such a binary bias. It's like we have such a binary bias that we can't think of some other third option. And it's like, but there is a third option, and there's more than just 3 options even. Yeah. So I think a lot of people get kind of stunned by that. So that's true. Almost in some way for me, a way of kind of being like, I don't really want to talk about it, but I don't, you know. Yeah. So that's even in saying that, my talking about how that sort of response is not only true to how I feel, but it's also advocating for myself and creating an environment where it's like, I don't have to talk about it anymore. Because if I say, you know, and just kind of like offhand agree, they're going to keep talking about it.
Yes. Right.
So now that you've said that, I'm like, actually, in some way that's me trying to stop talking about something I don't really care about. Care to talk about.
Yeah. Especially whenever it gets to like politics and stuff like that. 'Cause ain't nobody gonna win in that conversation. First of all,
and yes, there are more than 2 options in those conversations as well. Despite what you might have been told.
Madeline, I don't have the energy for that conversation.
All right, I get it, loud and clear.
But seriously, especially whenever it comes to like politics or the COVID talk or whatever, like all the stuff, I'm just like, I can't. You guys can talk about it. Go play the Switch or something. Yeah. You know.
Fair.
So,
what's question number 2?
All right. This has been said many times, but you feel responsible for how other people feel.
Yep. What's question number 3? Wait, Delena's thinking on that one.
Okay, for people pleasing, I generally agree with that. For me in particular, I have now flung the other way to where I'm like, no, you deal with your feelings.
Yeah.
Well, that's healthy. People are responsible for their own emotions.
Yeah.
But the people pleasing side of it is, yes, you feel
you want them
responsible
to
for them.
feel. Yeah, you want them like, oh no, I wanted you to feel this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 is you apologize often. I used to do this a lot. Sorry, and that's just a result of being in like an abusive home, an abusive relationship. Just she's always apologizing.
I think I would say I don't struggle with this. I think my therapist would say otherwise.
Oh, hey, that's good insight.
That's very yes.
Yes.
I think like one of my first few sessions, my therapist, like, she stopped me. She's like, because I was reading a message that I was trying to send. So I was trying to get feedback. I'm like, is this too forward? And she's like, in the 2 minutes you were reading this to me, you said sorry 5 times.
Wow.
Oh,
and I was like,
goodness.
oh, so I've been working on that for a couple of years now. And I feel like I've gotten better about saying that, because it was like an automatic, like, sorry, like, don't get mad, don't freak out, like, don't be upset by what I'm telling you. My emotions are, my feelings are.
A trauma response.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do that, I don't have any particular reason that I can think of why I do that, but I'm sure it'll come up.
In therapy.
It's buried in there somewhere. It will.
For me, I don't know that I struggle with this all that much. I think whenever I say sorry, it's in a moment that I truly feel like I need to. And I don't think I say it too frequently. So maybe that's something, and ask me again in 10 years, maybe I'll change my opinion on that. But as of right now, and there will be times like I wrote an email today and for work, and it was something that something at my event this past weekend went pretty badly wrong, and a lot of people were affected by it, and a lot of my vendors were affected by it, and I wanted to send them an email just saying, acknowledging how unfortunate the situation was and how sorry I was about it, that it happened. I think navigating those waters and trying to figure out, am I saying sorry in the appropriate way, and that I'm sorry it happened,
right,
or am I sorry because it's my fault? I was not saying I'm sorry because it's my fault. So I think that's the distinction, is that if you're constantly, why are you smiling at me like that?
Oh, God.
I was thinking of, I'll say it after you're done. Yeah.
I look over, you get like this very specific smile on your face.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That's what I could tell. You were like this close. So it's that difference between like, if you're over apologizing because you think everything's your fault kind of thing. So,
right.
Do you feel like that's kind of what your issue has been, is that you felt that way? Or
I think it was that way, like, because like it was like a trauma response.
Yeah. I
just automatically, and then there's also days that I feel like I swung the complete other way. And so I'm like, somebody will be like, I mean, you should probably apologize about that. I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I was like,
no.
my behavior changed because like I recognize that I was, but like actually saying I'm sorry when it's actually like called for is like completely different than just saying sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you, or I'm sorry, whatever.
Yeah. No, I feel like I've always been relatively good about apologizing for the right things in the right way. That's instead of just apologizing for everything, feeling like it's my fault. It's more like, I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry that this affected you, versus versus owning it, like trying to own that apology,
right,
as if it were my own,
right,
my own issue.
Delana,
I was laughing because I was trying to think of like you apologize too often. And I thought about how often, especially women, say sorry in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that led me to the thought of like, now sorry has kind of become also a passive aggressive word.
Yeah.
In
Sorry.
the workplace. Not only that, but it'll just be like, sorry, as per my previous email. Like that kind of sorry.
It's like read between the lines. It's like, sorry, you're stupid.
Yes, exactly. And so I was laughing because then I started to think of all the TikToks that I've seen that were about that stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense. Your facial reaction in that moment makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. So it didn't seem appropriate for what you were talking about at all. I was
funny.
like sitting here laughing. But do I say sorry? I do not say sorry as often as I should. I used to be the, like make myself small. Sorry person.
Yeah.
Now I have, but I would have a hard time saying sorry in the places where it actually mattered, where I actually needed to say sorry.
Right.
It's like I wanted to take all the blame for the things that had nothing to do with me, but God forbid I actually did something wrong and had to say sorry for it, because that's a way more vulnerable place.
Yes.
Where you're like, oh, frick, I'm used to just feeling like a failure.
Yeah.
Now I actually did something where I failed. And that's like so hard to cope with.
Yeah.
Because it's like your worst fear just became reality.
It's the
Yeah.
antithesis
And
of people pleasing.
Yeah.
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 And it's that verbal thing that verbal I'm sorry, that's the hardest thing to do. You try to change everything with your behavior, like, oh, I'll do the complete opposite of what I did just to hurt you, like that hurt you. It wasn't purposeful or anything, but obviously I did something. Let me change my behavior. But then you forget to say, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
See, it's not even that for me. It's that, like, in those moments, I have a really hard time because it's like this defensive response of just like, no, I can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Because if I'm wrong, then I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And so it's like I have a hard time recognizing the areas in which I've done something wrong. I've gotten a lot better thanks to an amazing husband who's like, hey, you're doing it again. And I'm like, frick, and it's taken years of me working on that to fully recognize it, and years of him telling me, hey, that's not cool, for me to be like, oh yeah, I do need to like fully, first of all, recognize what I'm doing wrong and not just believe that I'm right all the time. And then, freaking narcissist I grew up with coming out in me, you know what I'm saying? And then apologize for it and change my behavior after that.
Yeah.
I have gotten to the point where, so like the biggest thing for me is just like believing that I did something wrong.
Right.
And I think I want to give myself credit in the theme of giving ourselves credit for really tough situations. I want to give myself credit in that I was manipulated growing up into believing that so many things that I was doing that were just normal things were wrong.
Yeah.
That just like me being alive almost was wrong. And so to give myself credit, it is really hard for me to navigate
Something to unlearn.
But for me to be able to clearly see without clouded judgment who is right and who is wrong is hard because I was told that everything that I did was wrong.
Right.
And so like I then learned that I could be right, and now I still have trouble. Okay, am I actually right in this situation, or is this just me trying to uphold my rightness?
Right. Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, it gets really tough for sure.
Ready for number 4?
Nope. But okay.
This one was interesting. You feel burdened by the things you have to do. In that they're saying you're in charge of how you spend your time, but if you are a people pleaser, there's a good chance your schedule is filled with activities that you think other people want you to do.
I do think that there for a while I said yes to a lot of things. I've had to learn how to say no to things. And a lot of times the things that I had to say no to were things that I really did want to do. Like you, Delana and her husband throw parties a lot. And I think the first 2 that y'all invited me to, in the last year, I did not go to because I had, health things or whatever else. And it was just, I had at that point progressed to know that I needed to say no to that in order to give myself time and space at home.
Yeah.
So those were things that obviously I would have loved to be at and wanted to be at. And I was fearful of, y'all being disappointed that I didn't come, even though I knew at the end of the day that y'all would understand.
Yeah.
So I think I've gotten better with that, but there were definitely many, many years where I overburdened and over committed to things because people expected me there, because they wanted me there, and because at the heart of it, I wanted to be there as well, even though I did not have the capacity.
Yeah.
It was just recognizing my capacity in certain times and honoring that the way that it needed to be honored, so that whenever I actually showed up at things, I was 100%, maybe not 100. I don't know that we're ever really fully 100%, but 90% able to be there. And I showed up as a better version of myself because I wasn't showing up to every single thing that I possibly could. So I definitely think that I've really struggled with that in the past.
I have not. I have no problem saying no to
Oh, really?
no.
Going to things? Yeah.
I'm like,
I envy that.
no, I'm good. Thanks for the invite.
Wow. I
But-
have a hard time saying no to things.
Yeah.
To those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love going to things, but not if I don't feel up to it. If I don't feel up to it, I'm not gonna go. Like, I need to savor my energy for like work and stuff. But I will say, if it's a family thing, then I will feel more inclined to use up energy I don't necessarily have to make it to those things. But if it's like you
Yes. I just got a big old finger in my face.
I'm kidding. I just didn't have anywhere else to go with that. So
I get it though, because
I love you.
I want to clarify and say the things I don't want to do, I definitely don't have as hard of a time saying no to, unless it's with family. But yeah, if somebody asked me, I had somebody recently that I pseudo reconnected with say like, hey, let's get coffee and catch up sometime. And I was able to craft a response that basically said, not interested. Did not feel bad about it. I mean, of course, I spent time trying to figure out the like nicest way of saying not interested. But that was more just because I genuinely cared about making sure that I was honoring myself and being a kind human being.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have issue. If I don't want to do something and I don't really particularly care about the person, I'm just going to be like, no.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just like, sorry, no. It's just, no.
No. Yeah. I don't know. I think for me, it's like whenever the places where I have a hard time saying no is when like I don't want to do something, like I don't have the people energy, but Sam has a lot more people energy than I do, and it's more like I don't want to disappoint him because I want him to go
be asking.
I don't
like, where's the lane?
Yeah, and I
Husband
don't
pleasing,
want
not
I
people
don't
pleasing, husband pleasing.
That I think is the bigger thing for me, because I'm like trying to think of all the situations that I know for sure I've had a hard time saying no, and it always comes down to like, well, does Sam want me to be there? Like, will that mean a lot to him?
Yeah.
And there are still times that I say no, even when, like my whole world doesn't revolve around whether he wants me to go or not. But I do try to be considerate of that, and that like, if he wants me there, then it's nice for me to be there. And
I just said that for real out loud. I think that in a way that is an act of love more than it is people pleasing. It's more you loving him through action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to love him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
But you
But
also
you have to
love
be
yourself.
careful.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you are.
Yeah. Especially with my health stuff, I'm like, if I don't feel like it mentally or emotionally, I'm not going to put my body in a
Right.
situation that I'm just
Right.
like dreading. So
Yeah.
How do you feel about it, Hilary?
I've been thinking about it this entire time. So, I think I'm getting better at saying no to things. For me, it's like yeah, I'll go. And then the date comes and I'm like, just kidding. I can't go. And then I feel worse.
Yeah, same, dude.
And then on the other side of that, you've got somebody that like me who celebrates when somebody cancels on
Oh,
me.
absolutely, I do. I mean, I am that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You're often both. Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
but I've gotten better about being like, hey, no, not this time.
Yeah.
Maybe next time, like, let's make a plan. All right. 5, our favorite. You can't say no.
Speaking of,
I know. I feel
We're
like we
just saying
this.
this. We kind of like coupled it in with
we did.
that one.
I
Yeah.
feel like we've kind of answered that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
6, you feel uncomfortable if someone is angry at you. 1000%.
It totally depends on who it is.
Yeah, I think
There's
It
certain
doesn't
people
depend on who it is. I hate when people are mad at me.
really.
Yeah.
Like I said before, it could be a stranger, and I would like
I work
go home and cry over it.
Right.
all day.
I work in customer service. So
gosh,
like I
no.
have people mad at, and it's funny because like logically I know it's like everything is out of my hands. Like
Yeah.
1, this is company policy, or 2, like, yeah, I personally did this. Like I
Yeah.
personally did this to offend you.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't. Like, there are rules in place. I can't go above and beyond for you. And when you're yelling at me, I'm really not going to.
Yeah.
really kills the
But
vibe.
I have the habit of shutting down when people are angry at me. Again, it is my defense mechanism. I just shut down.
Yes.
And I'm learning the power of like when somebody's going off, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
just
This
okay.
is your
okay.
problem.
This is
not
your
mine.
problem, not
yeah.
mine.
That's exactly the reason why most of the time I don't care. There's a lot of times, most people, I do not care
Yeah.
if they're upset with me. But, and especially if it's like, I know that I'm going to be the villain in some people's story. I'm not always going to be the hero. I'm not always going to be a side character. Sometimes I'm going to be the bad guy. And I'm totally fine with that. Now, if it's somebody that I really care about and I've upset them, that makes me uncomfortable. But I think that's I think that's normal. I think that goes beyond just being a people pleaser. I think anybody would be uncomfortable if somebody that you love dearly or care about is upset with you. If that doesn't make you uncomfortable, I think there's a different issue happening.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure you have your boundaries in place.
Yeah, exactly. And recognize that like sometimes the people who love you and just people in general are going to be upset about something that really is not your responsibility.
Or
So,
has anything to do with you. You just get the brunt of it.
yeah, exactly. And I've gotten better these days about recognizing those moments.
Right.
And not, like you still care, but it's like, it's easier for
You're
you
like,
to...
I cared the first minute you were going off, and now I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
okay.
Yeah, it's like I know in my head, like I know what's the right thing to think when especially like a stranger or just really anyone's upset with you, but it doesn't compute. Like I know that it doesn't matter, but it definitely doesn't compute physically,
Logically,
or
you know,
mentally.
logically, you know, like, okay, I know.
This is not my
that's not
problem.
my problem,
This is
but-
their problem. However,
Do you feel
I'm
like
crippled by it.
Do you feel like it's like your duty to make them feel better?
100%.
Yeah, that's me. Same. Unless it's a stranger at the bank and I've already given you all the options and you still are upset.
Do I feel uncomfortable if somebody's angry at me?
No.
I think
No.
maybe if I have to ask, probably not.
I don't think you do.
I think that I only feel uncomfortable if no, but I wouldn't even say uncomfortable. I think because what I was going to say is if I know that I did something wrong, like they're rightfully angry at me. But then I don't think it's actually uncomfortable. I think it's just I'm in that moment now. I'm like, okay,
you're just gonna accept it.
I need to, you know, now I handle this situation wisely and you know, try to make amends and stuff like that. And but when somebody is unrightfully angry at me, is that a word?
Yeah.
Unright?
Yeah. Sure.
Then no, I don't care. I'm like, I that's where like my switch goes, and I'm just like, you go handle your feelings. I'm like, I'm not dealing. And honestly, every time I think that, it's coming from this place of like, I'm exhausted because I was like handed everybody's feelings growing up, you know, and kind of like manipulated into feeling like it was my responsibility to appease and be the people pleaser, the oldest daughter, all those fun things, you know what I'm saying?
I'm nodding my head emphatically right now.
And so like you kind of grow up in that, and so now it's just like I feel like I hit my limit and I just the switch flipped and I'm just like no, you go handle
that's
those
your
feelings.
mess.
That's your
my favorite thing to say these days is not my clowns, not my circus.
Oh, I like that.
I'm not your ringleader.
Yeah.
Go take your mess somewhere else.
So 8 is you need praise to feel good. No. I really don't think I do, because like I can be putting myself down and then I can hear the exact opposite, like, which logically I know it's true. It's usually if I'm like in a depressive episode, and like I know this person wouldn't lie to me about it, but I'm like, no, like no.
So hearing from other people doesn't make you feel good.
I mean, it does, but depending,
it doesn't do it for you though.
It's not the thing that brings me out of like the darkness or anything like that. I'm just kind of like, thank you. Like I acknowledge that, thank you, but it's,
I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I wouldn't say I need it to like bring me out of the darkness. However, it does lift me up a lot more than it used to, I guess.
Yeah. More important.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it brings me out of the darkness. If I'm in the darkness, just give it time.
That's true. That's very true.
I'll come back.
I'll be back going on for
Ain't nothing you could do. Sorry.
Yeah.
True.
But I will say that I'm more like you, Katie, and that like I'm a very passionate and fiery person. And so whenever, if I do something, if I accomplish something like organizing the pantry, I'm like, I'm going to go grab my husband. And I'm going to be like, God, look at what I did. God, look at, did you look at the pantry again this morning? You know, like
yes.
That's how my mom is. And we just, they just finished a renovation on a really old house and it's beautiful. I'm not like a super enthusiastic person about most things. And she was like showing me around the house, like, look at this, look at this, look at this. And I'm like, it looks nice. It looks really nice. And she was like, why aren't you more enthusiastic about this? And I'm like, I'm not a enthusiastic, peppy person.
That's how Sam is.
I don't know what you expect out of me. You've known me my whole life.
Yeah. Like Sam's version of jumping up and down, like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's like, oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah. In the same way. And there's moments where I get really overjoyed about stuff, but it's not often. And you know, I think that plays into the other side of what we're talking about, and that if you're the kind of person that desperately needs that from people and other people aren't giving it to you the way that you feel like you really need, you're never going to be happy. Right. And so like learning how to find your satisfaction elsewhere is so really important. Important.
Yeah. And I have had to work on that, but I do still struggle with like, if I do good work, I want it to be recognized.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But I also think that's normal. Like,
yeah. It is normal to an extent.
I think it's what it's talking about is like, if you cannot be satisfied with something unless other people are saying, hey, you've done an incredible job, you know.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about that too.
Yeah.
If they don't, then I haven't.
Yeah. Then
if they don't express their appreciation for the work I've done, all the hard work I've put into something, the time, the energy, like I'm going to think I did bad.
Gotta get that applause.
Yeah, like
Applause.
I'm like you, Delina. Like I'll vacuum our room, and if Bryce doesn't notice it, I'm like, did you notice what I did to the floors?
And you notice?
I just don't think
what's
they
under
notice
your
those
feet?
things.
Usually he does,
Yeah.
and
That's
it's
good.
really nice. Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
guys know, like, you've come over here and I've been like, you want to see my new desk?
Yeah.
I put a new desk together.
Yeah.
I need people.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a problem, you know? Not really. I feel like
I think to an extent it's fine. It's normal.
Yeah. I think a big part of it for me is less about like people pleasing insecurity, and like I would say like that's 25%. 75% is just like I get excited about things and I want to share it with other people.
Yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
want everybody getting this excitement with me
Yep.
because it's fun over here.
Like I think it's like if you put together the desk and you're really like your friends are coming over already, so I'm like, oh, I'm so excited, let me show you this.
Yeah.
But like
They're just like,
even if we weren't as
"Oh, it's a
enthusiastic,
desk."
you're like cool. But if you had to show people, and then because people weren't as excited or happy for you,
Yeah.
You
were
feel
just
less
like
excited about it, you know.
you're just like, well, fine, never gonna show you
Yeah.
anything again. Like that's
Yeah.
borderline the unhealthy
Yeah.
Mhm.
end of it.
It's like you can't
Yeah.
be
So I
happy
got-
with something unless other people share in that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with
I
you.
got 25% unhealthy
Yeah.
for sure.
All right, number 9. You go to great lengths to avoid conflict.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not me.
I think there's one person in particular that I do this with. Again, it's my feeling really responsible to make sure that she's happy and taken care of, and have always been her helper in that way. So I do think that I have an unhealthy amount of this with her in particular, but for the most part, everybody else, I'm like, if I really feel like something needs to be addressed, I'm going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I may do it, I'll try to, depending on who it is, I'm probably going to be really tactful about it, unless it's somebody I just don't care about. At that point,
yeah.
I'm just going to, whatever.
I discovered about myself that if it has to do with me and like my feelings, my emotions or thoughts, I avoid it at all costs.
Mhm.
But if it's for people that I care about, I get very fiery.
See, but that's part of what I feel like that's part of what I said earlier, where it's like it's so much easier to navigate a situation that's happening to somebody else.
Yeah,
Oh,
You have
absolutely.
complete clarity on like who's right, who's wrong, because you're not in it with all
Right.
those feelings, other than maybe the feeling of like defensiveness for them.
Mm.
But if you're the one that the situation is happening to, it is so much harder
It
to
is.
like want to be involved in that conflict because there's so much to sort out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
I
know.
think I've definitely gotten better in the
I think so too.
in recent years. I think
I
just
think it's a
comes
maturity
with
thing
maturity.
with everybody.
That's
I think
what I was
you
gonna
get better
say.
at
I think
I think it's something that is really important to you. It may not. I don't know. I think there's a difference. Obviously, there's a difference between giving yourself time to prepare versus doing everything you possibly can and running away from it.
yeah.
So, I think
Yeah.
you do. I think you do.
That's a
decent job.
good way to put it.
Yeah.
That is a
I
good
give
way to
myself
put it.
lots and lots of time to prepare. Sometimes it's years.
Yeah.
But I
Sometimes
think,
that's necessary.
yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
you need it, and sometimes it's not just you preparing. Sometimes it's the situation
It's
preparing
not ready.
itself,
Yeah, it's not
right?
ready
It's
to
not
be
just
said.
you. It's sometimes it's the other person
Yeah.
isn't ready to receive that. So
Yeah, or even just like you subconsciously processing what actually happened in the
like
situation.
the totality of it. Yeah.
I
To
go to
avoid-
very short lengths. Like, very short.
Yes.
I'm like, I will go to this much length to avoid it because I just mostly like, I'm not the person that like wants to be involved in conflict. But if there's something that I feel like needs to be discussed, I will not avoid it. I will sit with my feelings, figure out hopefully exactly how I feel, try to articulate it well and effectively to the other person, and hope that it goes well.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's very healthy.
I do too.
Last but not least,
You don't admit when your feelings are hurt. 100. Yeah, that's me. I'm raising raising both of my hands right now.
I'm
I
trying
don't
to
think this is
think on this
something I'm
one.
super like I could see that in you, but I don't, now that you say it, but I've like never thought of it or like actively recognize
I
that.
Yeah.
bury things very easily. It also doesn't help that I have RBF, so most people think that I'm pissed off all the time. But I find it very hard to admit when I'm truly feeling hurt. Sometimes I don't realize that I'm hurt, so there's that, but a lot of the times it's just like I don't admit that I'm hurt, because if I admit that I'm hurt, that means either I'm weak from this situation, or like I don't know how to cope with things easily, or just all these things that it turns around when it comes back to me. It's not has anything to do with anybody, but I'm like, oh, well, if this hurt me, then I'm just a weak individual, or
Yeah, kind of similar somewhat. I think for me, I don't usually have a hard time admitting that my feelings are hurt, that I've been hurt by somebody, but I do have to kind of I have to like let myself sit in it a little bit, because a lot of times it's either that I'm actually hurt and I have to figure out exactly what it is that hurt me, or in the moment I was overwhelmed. And that's something I experience very frequently because of my anxiety. That I just get really overwhelmed quickly, and that often feels like hurt. It feels like pain or sadness, but ultimately it's not. And if I give myself a night to kind of come down from it, I'm fine. And it's not something I feel like I have to go back to,
for sure.
But the things that actually hurt me, I definitely don't know that I have as much of a hard time discussing it these days. However, even just with what you said now, I have been accused of being overly sensitive because of that emotional response I have whenever I get overwhelmed. And so that used to always really bother me. And so that has created a hurt in me.
Right. Same.
But I'm much better about navigating that these days, because now I know I have an anxiety disorder, and I always have had it. And that's why I was consistently overwhelmed and emotional about things.
Right.
So it's, just learning those things about myself has made those waters a lot easier to navigate.
I don't think I struggle with this very much, actually.
I don't think you do either.
I think I'm all right on this subject for the most part. Yeah.
I think it's also easier because you and I are very similar in that you wear it.
Yeah,
so it's almost like people already know when you tell them. People already know.
Yeah. I think I've always been that way.
Yeah.
Like even through high school. Like you'll know.
Yeah.
The minute I walk into the room, like you will know if I'm feeling bad, or if I'm okay, or if I'm genuinely happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even my boss the other day, I was having an off day. It was after that harsh therapy session. And I walked into work. I thought I was like doing fine. And then she goes, "Are you okay?" So I guess I'm just very expressive in my emotions.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that whenever I'm hurt, I cry. And so it's
evident.
Yes, it's pretty
Same.
evident that I am hurt.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that, like, you know, when Sam and I get into tiffs and stuff like that, even if the thing that we're talking about is not a big deal, I do try to hold back tears, because I don't want him to feel like this is a bigger deal than it actually is, because I'm like, don't cry, because you know, whenever somebody cries, you soften, and you change your temperament. You may change the way that you speak to them and stuff like that, if you're a good person.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my experience is that people get more angry at you, like, why are you crying?
Yes, I've had that as well. Yeah. But
I haven't.
Good. You don't need it.
No,
I don't need that.
No. I don't want that, Junior.
So I cry pretty easily whenever I'm hurt. And Usually, but I will say that I will think on my hurt for a while before I communicate my hurt.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's one of those things that's hard to navigate,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to like really sort out exactly how you feel and why you feel the way that you do,
Yeah.
so that you can communicate it effectively, or at all. And
Yeah.
I do have points where I'm like, I got no friggin' idea why I feel this way, and I'll get to a point where I've been thinking on it for a while, and then I'm just kind of like, oh, I can't figure it out. Here's how I feel. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. You can do what you will with that, you know.
My husband's really good about pulling it out of me. He's like,
that's cool.
what's wrong? I'm like,
That's really good.
I'm like, nothing. And he's like gives me the look.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, but I don't want to go into it. And he's very respectful of that.
That's nice.
Or
That's
if I do
important.
want to go into it, he listens, and it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's really
That's
nice.
really
Sam is
good.
good about that as well.
I'm so happy about all y'all's good husbands treating you right.
I know. We got
Yay.
some good ones.
Good.
Yeah, we did.
Well, let's wrap it up.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Hilary, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you
today.
so much.
Right, thank you for having me.
And being our question asker. You're like our narrator of it.
That was
being
great.
our guide.
You were awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this week. And don't forget to drink your water and wear your sunscreen and be nice to yourself.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for hanging out with us again for this week's episode of the Womanly Podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media to hang out with us in between episodes and see pieces of our conversations that we don't get to include in these episodes, plus all of our bloopery humanness. We're on Instagram at Womanly Pod and TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter at Womanly Podcast. We hope to hang out with you more there. Have a super womanly week.